A while back, I was comparing two TVs on paper. Same brand, same series, same year, and the spec sheets looked nearly identical. 4K HDR, Dolby Vision to 120 Hz. Full array local dimming, everything matched. But one was $600 more expensive. And my first thought was, why? If the specs are the same, what am I actually paying for? So I started digging, not just into those two TVs, into how the entire industry presents information to consumers. And what I found changed how I read every box, every spec sheet, and every feature a TV brand advertises. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. The spec sheet is not lying, but it's not telling you the truth either. It's telling you a version of reality designed to make you stop asking questions. And in 2026, that gap between what's printed and what's real has never been wider. Let me show you what I mean. Part 1. 120 Hz doesn't mean what you think. Let's start with something basic. Refresh rate. Every TV box in 2026 screams 120 Hz. It's on the sticker. It's in the commercial. It's the first thing a salesperson mentions. But here's what most people don't realize. Not all 120 Hz is the same. Some TVs achieve true native 120 Hz panel refresh. Some use a technique called frame interpolation to simulate it. The panel itself might be 60 Hz, but the software inserts artificial frames between real ones. The spec sheet says 120 Hz. Technically, sort of, visually, very different. True native 120 Hz delivers cleaner motion, smoother camera pans, better gaming response. Interpolated 120 Hz can introduce artifacts, soap opera effect, input lag. If you game competitively, this difference is massive. If you watch casual content, you may never notice. But the box doesn't explain which one you're getting. It just says 120 Hz, and most buyers never ask. That's by design. Part 2. HDR certification is a low bar. Now let's talk about HDR. Every TV says HDR, HDR10, HDR10+, Dolby Vision, HLG, sounds premium. But here's what most people don't understand. HDR certification requires meeting a minimum standard. And that minimum is low. A TV can technically display an HDR signal and pass certification while barely delivering any meaningful brightness improvement over SDR. The result? You buy a TV expecting HDR content to blow your mind. And it looks fine, not bad, just not what you imagined. If you search Reddit for HDR looks washed out or HDR not impressive, you'll find thousands of posts, and the answer is almost always the same. The TV meets HDR specs on paper, but it doesn't have the brightness or contrast to actually show HDR properly. HDR without enough brightness is like surround sound without a subwoofer. Technically present, functionally underwhelming, and brands know this. But the certification badge goes on the box regardless. Part 3. The brightness war is manufactured. Now this one is interesting. In 2026, every brand is screaming about nits. 2,000 nitses, 3,000 nitses, and 4,000 nitses. It's become the horsepower war of TVs. But here's what rarely gets said. Peak brightness numbers are measured under specific conditions. Small window, short duration, specific content type. That 3,000 nits number, it might only apply to a 10% window for a brief flash. Full screen brightness, much lower. Sustained brightness, lower still. This doesn't mean the TV is bad. It means the number on the box represents a ceiling, not your everyday experience. But when you're standing in a store comparing two TVs and one says 3,000 nitses and the other says 1,500 nitses, your brain assumes one is twice as good. It's not, and brands know that. They spend millions engineering peak brightness numbers specifically for marketing. Not because it makes your experience dramatically better, but because it wins comparison charts. Part 4. Dimming zones. The other number game. Let's talk about local dimming zones. Brands love advertising these. 2,000 dimming zones. 5,000 dimming zones. More zones means better contrast control, right? In theory, yes, but here's the catch. Zone count alone doesn't tell you how well they're controlled. A TV with 2,000 well-managed zones can outperform a TV with 5,000 poorly managed zones. The algorithm matters. The processing matters. The speed of zone transitions matters. But none of that fits on a sticker. So brands advertise the number, because more is easier to sell than better. If you've ever wondered why two TVs with similar zone counts look dramatically different in dark scenes, that's why. The number is real, but it's incomplete. Part 5 software updates have an expiration date. Here's something that actually frustrates me. TV brands rarely tell you how long they'll support your software. You buy a smart TV in 2026. It feels fast. Apps work, everything is smooth. But 2 years later, things slowed down. 3 years later, you're wondering why Netflix takes 15 seconds to open. 4 years later, the app you use most gets discontinued for your platform version. Go on Reddit and search TV apps not supported anymore. You'll find a graveyard of posts. This app stopped working on my 2022 TV. I can't get the new Disney Plus update. My smart TV isn't so smart anymore. And here's the uncomfortable part. Brands don't advertise software support timelines. They don't say, this TV will receive updates for 4 years. Because if they did, you might buy differently. Instead, the assumption is built on silence, and most consumers don't think about it until it's too late. Part 6 Smart TV means data TV. This one isn't hidden exactly, but it's buried. Every smart TV collects data. What you watch, when you watch, how long you watch, what apps you use. This data is valuable. In fact, for some budget TV brands, the TV hardware is sold at a loss. The profit comes from advertising, data collection, content partnerships. That's why some TVs show you ads on the home screen. That's why some TVs have pre-installed apps you can't remove. That's why some budget brands can price so aggressively. The TV isn't the product. You are. Now, this isn't unique to Walmart models, but budget tier TVs are more aggressive with this because the hardware margin is thinner. They need the revenue stream. Most buyers don't read privacy policies. Brands know that. Part 7. The processor gap nobody advertises. Let's talk about something that affects every single thing you do on a TV. The processor. Brands will tell you about display type, brightness, size, resolution. But the processor? That gets buried. A strong processor means better upscaling, smoother motion, faster menus, better HDR tone mapping, longer software relevance. A weak processor means softer 1080p content, laggier interface, worse motion handling, shorter functional lifespan. But processors don't sell TVs. Screen size does, price does. So budget models often quietly use older or weaker chips. And the spec sheet won't tell you. You'll only feel it months later when things start lagging. Part 8. Warranty fine print. Here's something that comes up on Reddit constantly. My TV broke after 18 months. The warranty is only 12 months. They won't cover it. Standard manufacturer warranty in the US is typically 1 year. 1 year. For a TV, you might keep 7 years. Some retailers extend this. Costco is famous for adding years. But Walmart's standard coverage? Usually what the manufacturer provides, which is usually 1 year. And burn-in? Almost never covered. Backlight failure outside warranty? Your problem. Extended warranties from third parties? Read the fine print carefully. Brands don't advertise warranty limitations prominently because it doesn't help sell the TV. Part 9. Panel binning and the lottery. Nobody mentions. We touched on this before, but it deserves deeper context. Panel binning is the process of sorting manufactured panels into quality tiers. Better panels go to premium products. Acceptable panels go to mid-tier products. Marginal panels may go to high-volume price-sensitive products. This doesn't mean budget TVs get defective panels. It means the tolerance window is wider, and wider tolerances mean more variance between individual units. One person's TV looks perfect. Another person has mild banding, same model, same store, same week. If you search Reddit for panel lottery, you'll find this conversation plays out constantly. Some people exchange units 3 or 4 times. That's not normal quality assurance. That's cost management. Part 10, clearance versus current. The hidden value play. Here's one more thing brands won't tell you. Last year's mid-tier TV on clearance is often a better buy than this year's entry model. Because the mid-tier model was built to a higher performance standard. Better processor, better dimming implementation, better build quality. But this year's entry model is newer, and newer feels better psychologically. Brands count on that. The new model gets a marketing budget, the old model gets a clearance sticker, but performance doesn't always follow the calendar. This is one of the most repeated tips on R4K TV. Buy last year's higher tier on sale instead of this year's budget tier at full price. It's counterintuitive, but it's usually right. Final, what changed for me? After all of this research, something shifted in how I buy TVs. I stopped reading the sticker. I started reading the fine print. I stopped trusting peak brightness numbers. I started looking at real, measured tests. I stopped assuming same series meant the same TV. I started checking model suffixes. I stopped being impressed by spec sheets. I started being curious about what they weren't showing. Because in 2026, TV brands aren't lying to you. They're just showing you the highlight reel and hiding the footnotes. The spec sheet is a sales document, not a truth document. Once you understand that, every TV purchase changes. Not because the industry is evil, but because you're finally shopping with your eyes open.